Okay, so my opponent's main claim was FIFA has a significant negative effect on the sporting world, and his secondary claims were FIFA's dishonesty negatively affects the game on the field, FIFA's dishonesty negatively affects the game off the field, and FIFA's decisions have caused problems for those who are not involved in the game itself. So my response to that is FIFA itself is not dishonest, rather its individual members are. And my example is that Gustavo Cabrera, Yoni Flores, and Guillermo Ramirez are all players of the Guatemalan team who have recently been banned for life after investigation found that they were fixing national team against one of their games against Venezuela in 2011 and Costa Rica in 2012. Another example is Armando Collado of Nicaragua, is also banned for life for match fixing multiple times in one of the leagues that include North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. My opponent said that that members of FIFA have bribed officials to call certain games in favor of certain teams. However, it's members of FIFA, it's players of the games with the players of the other games that have been fixing matches rather than the officials. Another important fact that he states is that he compared Luis Suarez and English defender John Terry and Luis Suarez as an Uruguayan forward, Luis Suarez was fined for 8 matches, and John Terry was fined for only 4 matches and banned for 4 matches, and they both had similar remarks. However, what he failed to mention was Luis Suarez was only fined for 40,000 euros, while John Terry was actually fined 220,000 euros. So, because of even though Luis Suarez, the Uruguayan forward, was banned for 8 games, he was actually fined less. And John Terry, who was banned for only 4 games, was actually fined more. And this is because when the council decides on how much to ban and how much to fine people, they base it on how much money they actually make per game. Another point that he also makes is that the bid for the World Cup for Qatar was actually bought and there was bribery involved. However, Qatar did not buy the World Cup. His evidence stated that there was an email that was leaked to the public that said that Qatar bought the World Cup. However, what the Secretary General, who wrote the leaked email, actually meant to say, this is what he actually said. What I wanted to say is that the winning bid used for financial strength to lobby for support. They were a candidate with a very important budget and have used it to heavily promote their bid all around the world in a very efficient manner. I have at no time made or was intending to make any reference to any purchase of votes or similar unethical behavior. So in a way, Qatar did buy the vote, but they bought the World Cup through their financial stability and things like that. His third secondary claim was FIFA's decision had caused problems for those who are not involved in the actual game itself. However, he did not provide any evidence that states that they have angered other groups. Actually, what happened, he said that FIFA has angered gay rights groups because Sepp Blatter, the FIFA president, recommends that homosexuals do not engage in sexual activity during the 2022 World Cup. However, this was actually a joke that Sepp Blatter made. He was asked in an interview about cultural difficulties for gays during the Qatar World Cup because Qatar is not pro-gay. He jokingly stated that because Qatar is an anti-gay nation, homosexuals should not engage in sexual activity. But after he said that, he continued seriously saying that we are definitely living in a world of freedom, and I'm sure when the World Cup will be in Qatar in 2022, there will be no problems. So my opponent failed to mention that this was actually a joke, and the president, Sepp Blatter, did not mean to actually offend homosexuals. He also says that there has been discrimination and racial inequality. However, FIFA promotes racial equality and advocates anti-discrimination. Every year since 2002, they have actually had anti-discrimination days where members and referees and players come together and they talk about discrimination. They say things like, discrimination of any kind against a country, private person, or group of people on an account of ethnic origin, gender, language, religion, politics, or any other reason is strictly prohibited and punishable suspension or expulsion. So because of FIFA actually supports anti-discrimination, and because of this, FIFA doesn't actually, FIFA does not have a negative effect on the sporting world. Rather, it helps the game of soccer.
All right, the structural issues are pretty good. The kind of general challenge that it is the organization, it's not the organization, but rather individuals that might have some of these issues is an okay idea. I think if the Guatemalans that did the fixing, for instance, who have been banned for life, are the same people that the advocate's referring to, that you need to make that a little bit clearer and point out, in fact, that the only examples that the advocate cites are people who have been dealt with in a very severe way by the organization. So the idea that it's the organization that produces these outcomes is problematic, since they're the ones taking the most drastic actions to respond to that. It's players rather than officials. I think that you've got a good example here on the players. I'm not sure that ever addresses the officials that the advocate cited as being a source of the problem. On the inequities on the penalties, I think you explained that pretty well. The advocate used these two cases, and they're the same two cases that you're analyzing. I do think you want to give us the source citation on this, but the explanation that you have, I think, is relatively clear, and it diminishes what seems like a disproportional punishment that the advocate was talking about before. On about the Qatar getting the World Cup and buying the World Cup, the Secretary General of FIFA has this broader statement about what's being said. I don't know that actually addresses what the advocate's information said, but it's a pretty reasonable counterpoint on that. So I think that's a good thing to say. Like I said, I'm just not sure that it deals with the advocate's evidence very clearly. The argument about gay rights, for instance, I thought was reasonably addressed, although you kind of in essence imply that the advocate has quoted somebody out of context, that they missed that it was really a joke, and that they suggest that there isn't really going to be any particular problem here. If there were comparisons to other places, for instance, where similar cultural issues might have been problematic, but they had overcome them, I think that would be a good example for you to show at that particular point. And then all the stuff about its anti-discriminatory practices, I think those are good general responses to the issue, but I don't know that any of them attack the advocate's evidence on those points, and I think you could be a little bit more aggressive on that. All right, thank you.